Applause for 16-year-old Greta Thunberg as EU chief pledges $1 trillion to curb climate threat. Greta Thunberg, literally changing the world.
Here's a summary of the article.
16-year-old climate action leader Greta Thunberg stood alongside European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker Thursday in Brussels as he indicated after weeks of climate strikes around the world inspired by the Swedish teenager that the European Union has heard the demands of young people and pledged more than $1 trillion over the next 7 years to address the crisis of a rapidly heating planet. Every fourth euro spent within the EU budget will go towards action to mitigate climate change, Juncker said. Juncker's comments came at the Civil Society for Renaissance event in Brussels, where Thunberg doubled down on her consistent message that politicians must take serious strides to stop the climate crisis and protect the Earth for future generations and that the EU must double its target of cutting greenhouse gases by 40% from 1990 levels by 2030. This target is not sufficient to protect the future for children growing up today. If the EU is to make its fair contribution to stay within the carbon budget for the 2C limit, then it needs a minimum of 80% reduction by 2030, and that includes aviation and shipping, Thunberg told political and business leaders. Juncker was among those who praised the tireless advocacy of Thunberg and others of her generation, hundreds of thousands of whom have captured the attention of the world and their governments by staging weekly climate strikes since December. Supporters of the climate strike movement, which Thunberg began last year with a one-person strike at the Swedish parliament, and which has grown into a global movement with students all over the world planning events, also gave Thunberg credit for leading the pressure campaign. Greta Thunberg, literally changing the world.
This post received a score of 25,919, with an upvote ratio of 84%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Unfamiliar with how the EU works regarding this. How much weight is his pledge? Is it just like a politician promising they will work on something? Or is there legal weight to what he is saying?
Very little. But this girl is stirring up shit, so she is wonderful PR in the world, and Reddit will forget the hell out of this pledge in 3 years.
Remind me, 3 years, check on Greta.
Oil lobbyist.
LMFAO.
Gotta hook 'em while they're young. A motto to live by for both lobbyists and pimps.
Not fishermen though, gotta throw them back so they grow up big and strong.
$1 trillion is serious money. This is more than most countries' annual GDP.
The actual pledge is about 0.25% of the EU's GDP in that time period. The article or Reuters got the numbers wrong. Reuters does not equal accurate math. We all know this after hundreds of thousand-pound bombs kept a small village awake.
How could millions of one-pound bombs possibly keep 10 small villages awake? I would like to know what this refers to.
Likewise.
Yeah, anyone got a link?
I've got 10 small links for you, does that help? Holy shit, 1 trillion over 7 years. I think that we might just be finally starting to get it. I pray that the rest of the world will take this as seriously as the EU. Edit, looks like the number might have been misquoted. 250 billion is still nothing to sneeze at.
Other countries aren't doing it. Why should we put ourselves at a disadvantage? Trump. Hold my beer, EU. I'm not saying the EU is at a disadvantage for pursuing active measures against climate change.
It's not just the US. As a Canadian living in an oil-based regional economy, we share a huge part of the responsibility to correct course. It's a very uphill political battle here, but we can't keep ignoring it. Where I live, people are aggressively campaigning to get rid of carbon tax, and I'm worried that a lot of people are gonna fall for it.
Wasn't the carbon tax or a tax on fuel the ignition for the protests in France with the yellow jackets? What's happened is people have become accustomed to externalizing the cost of environmental impacts. So when carbon taxes or environmental regulations cause the price of goods to increase, people see it as infringing on their way of life.
Canada's carbon tax, when implemented, can be revenue neutral. That is an option on the table given to each province by the federal government. It would actually see low-income people get a rebate every year if they went this route. It would not hurt the poor like in France.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.